Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Integrated Self Podcast. I'm so excited to finally be back doing this podcast. I took a little bit of a break, as you can probably tell if you guys have been subscribed and probably noticed that I haven't been around. And it's because I actually launched my book. My book is finally out of publication. It's so funny because we were in publication for so long that I honestly was thinking to myself, like, people probably think that this book is not even like real, you know what I mean? But anyway, the book is out. I'm so excited. I have so much more time now, and now is the time for me, at least, that I've been getting the guidance through Spirit to really start talking more about the book, more about myself, more about what I truly believe in when it comes to holistic healing, when it comes to spirituality, mindset work, self-improvement, all of these things, because that's kind of what I wrote my book on. So whether you're listening right now on Spotify or you're watching me on YouTube, this is my book. I'm holding it up now. It is called The Integrated Self. We have the hardcover, which is what I have here, and the paperback version. And essentially it says on the cover, this is your guide to authentic personal and spiritual growth. So I'm so excited to be sharing so much more about this book in my content on social media. Also here, I plan on doing more videos just specifically about the book and diving deep into the book itself. But I'm super excited because I actually got like this download of how to use the information and the model from the book to help women with certain things. And that's kind of like where we're going with this episode today, is like, it would make sense for me to come on here and start talking just about the book because that's like my newest thing, you know, it's my baby, she's here. But at the same time, I can't ignore this feeling that I've been getting to talk more specifically about good girl syndrome, because I just have so much to say about this, and I've been guided to talk about it. It's been something that's just like recurring on my mind, and it's almost like I've just been kind of guided to go in a certain direction with my content and with who I'm meant to help and everything. So thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to dive into this today, and I'm also finishing my PhD, so I have a couple of classes left. I'm going to be receiving my doctorate and PhD in natural medicine, which I'm so excited about. But today, as you can probably tell by the title of this podcast episode, we're going to be talking about good girl syndrome. And we're going to get more into the model of the book because, as I stated before, the book is called The Integrated Self, but inside the book, we also introduce and show you guys this model that my co-author and I created called the Integrated Self Model. And essentially, this is a model where you guys can kind of evaluate where you're at along your journey of healing, of spiritual growth, because I really feel like it just condenses everything into one place, especially for those of you guys that are like self-healing and doing this work on yourself, and you're kind of just like, you know, learning how to follow your own innate wisdom, your own divine guidance, and heal your wounds, and doing the mindset work, and creating a solid foundation for yourself and your life. That is essentially what we wrote about. And it kind of ties in like the spirituality with the human life, right? Like tying in your humanity with your spirituality, and integrating the ego with the soul, so that now your mind and your heart are in coherence, meaning that, you know, you're not sending these mixed signals out to the universe where you're like, you know, your heart, your soul is calling you to do something, but you always have that ego or that the inner critic talking to you, telling you all the reasons why you can't do it and why it won't work out, and all of the fears that you currently have within you about going in that direction or making that choice or moving to that location, whatever it is for you in your life. When we find that when the mind and the heart are in coherence, you send out such a clear message to the universe. It's like, it's when you actually have that soul calling, or that new idea that's just lighting you up inside, and your mind is actually on board. Your mind is like, yes, let's freaking do this. You know what I mean? When everything's in alignment, we actually have such a magnetism to us. And so that's essentially the integrated self model. And we kind of go over like what makes up a really solid foundation, right? Because a lot of us go through dark nights of the soul. A lot of us go through ego deaths. But what happens is, it's kind of like we build and build and build, and then depending on what we're experiencing, we can come back down to a baseline, you know. And it's like really understanding what makes up that baseline, right? So like if things fall apart in your life, if unexpected things happen, right, because we don't have control over everything. And I think that new age spirituality kind of sends out this message, maybe not intentionally, I hope, but it's this message that like we are in control of everything and we create our realities, and we do have that power. But at the same time, like, we don't have control over things in our life. Like, pain is a necessary part of life. We're all going to go through pain. And so when we can kind of hold this mindset that yes, we are powerful, yes, we have way more control over things than we've been taught, but we also don't have full control, meaning that yes, we are a piece of God, we are a piece of source that came here to experience life as you, as a unique individual. But at the same time, like, source, God, the universe, whatever your words are, is way more powerful than you as a human being right now are. So I think that a lot of people kind of cringe when they hear like that you are like powerful and like you can do all these things, and you can. Like, literally, I've seen actual magic in front of my eyes, and it's so possible. And I believe in infinite possibilities, but at the same time, it's not about developing that spiritual ego where it's like, I'm powerful, I am God, because we are not. And I think that's kind of a level of like delusion or imbalance. And that's why we created this model and this whole entire book for you guys, because as we heal on our own, we can come across imbalances depending on the information that you know, where you're focusing your energy, what kind of solid foundation and habits and relationships, like what are your emotional voids that you didn't get filled when you were a child. We go through all of that stuff in this book. And I love this book so much because, last thing I'll say on the book before we really get into Good Girl Syndrome, is that when it comes to the book, we wanted to write it in a way where it's not super like science-y and clinical, but also not super metaphysical, because there's a wide range of beautiful people online, and there are some spiritual people that I don't even know what they're saying. You know what I mean? And I'll admit that, and I understand that. That doesn't discount what they're saying. What they're saying is probably valid, but the language they use is so, I don't know what the word is, because I respect these people, and I'm like in awe of the way that they present their ideas. And I just can tell that a lot of people that are kind of stepping foot and starting their healing journeys and their spiritual growth, they probably are like, I don't understand what you're saying. You know what I mean? So we wrote this book in a way where like literally anyone could pick it up off a shelf in Barnes and Noble or order it and put it on your Amazon cart. But we wrote it in a way where literally anyone can pick up this book. Anyone can learn something from this book. It's not super metaphysical. It's not super scientific and clinical either. And we did that on purpose. And I really hope that we did a good job with that. I think right now we just have the paperback and the ebook or Kindle version as well. So we have different price points, different kinds, like whether you like digital, whether you like paperback, hardcover. And then we also have, we're working right now on an audiobook for those of you guys that like to listen, or you're really busy and you like to listen to things. That is coming. We're actually doing our auditions right now for the audiobook, which is kind of like a really cool process and super interesting. So that is that, and I'm super excited. But kind of backtracking a little bit, a couple years ago, it was probably like 5 years ago at this point, it was when I was really doing a lot of like self-reflection, and I entered a relationship that really had me look in the mirror. And I really believe that relationships aren't about finding the perfect person. It's more so about finding someone that makes you feel safe and encourages you to grow, right? Like, it would be a sad thing if we were all in a relationship that just stayed the same over decades of time. And so it's more so about finding that person that you know you can go through hard moments with, you can go through the best moments of your life with, and they're the person that you trust, they're the person that you want to be with. And so I honestly was dealing with a lot of my own trauma. I entered this relationship, honestly, when I was the most unhealed version of myself. And I actually write about it in my book here. And it honestly was a blessing, and it was a blessing because I had to really look at myself in the mirror and be like, if you want to sustain this relationship, there's a lot of things that you're going to need to work on and unlearn, because before this relationship, was very used to, and I thought it was normal to be in toxic relationships. And my parents now are divorced. So back when I was a child, I kind of saw obviously a certain example of a relationship, and it was toxic at times. And I just thought that was normal. I thought that all couples went through that at some point, and maybe they do, but it's more so about like, I didn't really have a good example of what actual vulnerability was and what healthy communication actually looked like. And so when I entered this relationship, I was realizing it's almost like it mirrored back to me all of the things within me that made me feel anxious, insecure, my fears, all of these things. And so I started healing, obviously, for myself, and because I started realizing like, oh, this isn't really who I am, this isn't how I actually want to be, but I realized that I was being this way from like to protect myself because I felt unsafe. I felt like everyone was going to hurt me. And I think that I just kind of started realizing like everything was mirroring back to me like, girl, like you got to get it together. And I also realized that I couldn't fully trust this person, and the inability to trust was actually coming from my own fears. It wasn't anything this person was doing. They were actually being perfect, but I was kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I was like kind of already expecting them to fail. And it's because I was holding on to these expectations, these past experiences that taught me that people are going to leave you, people aren't going to want you, they're only going to want you for a certain amount of time, and then they drop you, like all these things that I experienced from the past. And I was kind of just like reflecting that into my present moment, which is why we manifest certain things over and over again, is because we're pulling the past into the present, and we know that we manifest from the present moment. So that's just what I was feeling, and I started to realize like, wow, all the pieces were clicking. Like, this is why you're so anxious in public. This is why you're so insecure in social situations. This is why you're so hard on yourself. This is why you're so you're terrified to stand up or disagree with anybody, or stand up for what you desire and what you actually want for yourself. And I feel like I was just kind of molded into the shell of who I am just from the past, and I write about all of this. Like, I have a whole part in this book where I write to you guys and I share with you guys like extreme situations that I feel like we all, not all of us, hopefully not, but I know are very common for people to go through, like bullying, being rejected, whether that's career-wise, your parents, dating, relationships. I also write about playing small and feeling like I was silenced growing up, because I grew up in an environment that was more so like, how do I describe this? Like, kind of like parents know best, listen to us, obey us, these are the rules, like you can't talk back, and this is the way it is, and you just need to follow, you just need to do these things, you just need to be this way. And I know that now, like, I have such a great close relationship and healthy relationship with both my parents, and so this is like, it's so beautiful because I can talk to my parents about this stuff now, and there's no resentment about any of this, because I truly have come to this higher perspective that I went through all of this for a reason. And obviously the reason, part of it is for me to teach on it now, talk about it, share it, and kind of create these vulnerable situations where we can all connect and share these deeper things that we've gone through. But I write about a lot of things that I feel like are very common for us to go through, and that shape us when we experience them, like bullying, right? And so all of these things that I kind of grew up in, like I grew up in just kind of a lot of fear, and things have to be perfect, and things have to be like always have their place. Your room has to be clean, the house has to be clean, and my parents were, God bless them, they were working their booties off, they were providing for 3 young kids, and I'm sitting here so grateful because we did have a childhood where we had meals on the table. We had extra money to go to baseball tournaments and volleyball, travel volleyball. I played all over the Northeast. We had family vacations. We did things, and I had a good childhood, but there were a lot of darker moments that really impacted me, and I noticed them still within me and still kind of playing a role in my life when I was in college, when I was a young adult. And I realized that these are just things that I personally need to part ways with in order to become the version of me that I always kind of saw in my head. I always saw this version of me that I never felt like I was ever, where I was like confident, outgoing, excited, putting myself out there, excited to meet people, loving, approachable, nurturing. And I always had like this innocent side to me. Like I was always, not that we were sheltered as kids, but we had rules. Like we couldn't download music off iTunes unless our parents knew what songs we were downloading. We couldn't watch SpongeBob. So I never got those SpongeBob references when I grew up and went to college or high school or anything, because I was like, I wasn't allowed to watch SpongeBob. You know what I mean? But there were just like certain rules that we had to follow. And I think that now I'm thinking about myself eventually becoming a mother, like I understand why my parents did that. I understand they were trying to protect our innocence and protect exposure to things. Like I remember, this is a funny story, but I think I was like 14, my older brother was 15 or 16. For Christmas, I started to work a job at a bowling alley. I had some money. And so for Christmas one year, I actually went out to the mall and I got my brother one of the Drake like CDs. And this was super cool because like I feel like I was like, oh, this is kind of rebellious because we weren't allowed to listen to rap or anything like that. But at the same time, we're like teenagers now. And like I didn't tell my parents what I got him and I just wrapped it. So Christmas morning, my brother unwraps it and he's hyped. He's like, oh my God, like no way, this is awesome. My parents immediately were like, absolutely not. And they were like, no. And they took the CD and I was like, damn, like I really tried. I really tried to like push my parents' boundary a little bit and it didn't work. But that just kind of gives you like a little bit of like my upbringing. And you know, my older brother, like I'm a middle child, so my older brother was like kind of the more rebellious one, pushing the boundaries, sneaking out. He knew the rules, but he was the one to be like, I'm not doing that, you know, like I'm gonna just sneak out. I'm not, I know the rules, but I'm not gonna follow some of them, you know, kind of energy. And I was so debilitated by fear growing up. I feared my parents. Like it was so weird because like I developed this relationship where I was so attached to them and like wanted them to always be happy and always wanted to minimize their stress. Like this is where my hypervigilance and people pleasing started to form, because I've just been like very caring and nurturing for other people. Like when I see someone, like I just have so much empathy. I feel what you feel. And it's almost like for a while I didn't have a boundary there, of course, because this started when I was a kid and you don't comprehend or have awareness like this when you're this young. But I started to realize like, okay, mom and dad are stressed, like I'll make dinner, you know, or they worked late, let's clean the whole house today so that when they get home, like there's nothing for them to yell at us for, there's nothing we're in trouble for, everything is perfect. And that means that when they see that, A, I'll get the validation from them, and B, they'll be happy and like the whole energy of the home will be like chill for the night, you know, like kind of minimizing, like just kind of foreshadowing or forethinking about, okay, this is how they're gonna be. Also the type of energy where if my parents were cleaning the house one morning and I woke up late, I already felt guilty because I'm like, I should be cleaning with them, and I'm lazy because I'm just laying in bed and my parents pay for this house. You know what I mean? Like telling myself these stories about how I constantly need to help people and I'm gonna get in trouble if I don't show up and please you, essentially. And so this is essentially good girl syndrome. And I didn't know, like I started to kind of see this within myself in college when I would sacrifice, like literally self-sacrifice my grades, my money, anything for other people to be on their good side, to be seen as, oh yeah, we love Arianna, she's so nice, she's always there for you. But at the end of the day, I was always sacrificing my own responsibilities, my own happiness, what I even stand for. Like I would even sacrifice some values and morals that I had just to fit in or be seen in a certain light. And that's when I realized like I can look back to certain times where I did things out of an emotional void. Like I felt so empty, so miserable that I needed validation. I didn't know how to validate myself, so I always thought it would come from outside of me, that I would have to do things or be certain ways or say certain things so that people would see me, so that people would know me. I would have this great reputation. And I did things that, honestly, I've been in situations where like, thank God there were people around me that loved me because they saw that I was like not being myself and that I was not being healthy or safe. And they thank the Lord, like seriously, that they actually were around for those things and pulled me out of them. And I know that that's not the case for everybody, but I'm so grateful. Like I just have these memories that I've gone back to, like when I was healing and still am healing, obviously, where I was like, wow, like I will never, like I will protect my inner child at all costs now. Like I will never allow myself, I will never put myself in those environments, situations ever again, because I respect myself so much more now, like more than I ever have and always will. And that is so important to me. Like when you really look back at certain things you've been through and you're like, never again. We're never putting ourselves over there ever again. We're never doing that to ourselves ever again. And I also have so much love for that version of me because I just know now that she was hurting, that she was in pain, that she needed love. And unfortunately, she just didn't know how to give that to herself. So she was like doing all these things as a cry for help for other people to give her those things. I graduated college. I was kind of already starting my physical transformation because when I was in college and I was treating myself this way, I did not love myself. I was not connected to God at all. I walked away from religion and church and everything when I graduated high school, went right into college, and immediately within 3 weeks of being at college, I experienced a huge trauma that I didn't know would be affecting me for the next couple of years. And so it's almost like I walked away from everything I knew. I started to see myself in ways that I didn't enjoy seeing and I knew wasn't me. But I also was going through more trauma at the same time, that it was like building up, and I was just like losing myself. And it got to the point where I gained weight. I was inflamed. I gained 40 pounds my freshman year. And I want to make it clear to any woman listening to this that when you leave high school, or let me just say this first, you should not expect yourself to have the same body that you had when you were 16 or 18 years old when you are 25, 30, 35. And if that is some kind of belief in your belief system and you're comparing your body to your teenage body, you can free yourself from that perspective and belief. When I say that I gained 40 pounds my freshman year, I feel like a lot of us do gain weight, especially when we go to college, because we have all this food, at least I was on campus, I had a dining hall, there was food, there was, whatever habits you have in relationships with food that you have, you're kind of bringing in, and you have so much more freedom. And depending on who you are, you might be like dabbling in alcohol and drinking in the party culture of college, which is kind of normalized now. And so I was dabbling in all of that stuff. I was drinking a lot because I was going through trauma and saying I'm drinking because I'm fun and I'm in college, but deep down I really was like masking my feelings and escaping from the pain. And so I realized that I gained 40 pounds freshman year. For me, like when I would just think about lifestyle habits and changes, those are the things. It was my foundation that I never had solid, that when I was going through more and more trauma and treating myself with less and less respect, I didn't have a solid baseline. I didn't have a solid foundation to fall back on. So I had a terrible relationship with food. I had terrible relationship with how I saw my body and how I felt in my body. I had a terrible relationship with alcohol, and I just started to gain weight. I started to feel inflamed. I started to just use things to mask how I really felt. And so I went through college, and towards the tail end of my college experience is when I met my boyfriend, who I am still with now, that I talked about in the beginning of this podcast. And we are 7 years into our relationship and we are doing amazing. And that is when I started to really look at myself in the mirror and started to kind of have these inner conversations with myself. And I started, thankfully, I'm so grateful as well for this, that my college roommates that I lived with were all like athletes and healthy people. So they all had those as values, and they've always had those habits in place. And it was so beautiful because they welcomed me in and they taught me how to work out. They taught me how to eat, and it was all from a place of love. It wasn't really it was really never a conversation I don't think we ever had with each other. Like, hey, I want to lose weight and I feel this way about myself. It was more so like, hey, I'm coming to the gym with you tomorrow. Is that okay? And from there, I lost all the weight. I came back to balance in my body. I regulated my hormones. My skin got so much better. I detoxed my body, and I started to just kind of focus more on the physical, the actual daily habits that I know will make me feel better on a daily basis, with food, with relationship with alcohol, sugar, sleeping, all of these habits that I knew I could control. By the time I graduated college, I would say I kind of got the physical health back in control and maintaining and solidifying in that foundation. And then I realized that I wanted to, after I graduated, go into holistic healing and holistic health. And I really started to be drawn towards this healing internally. minds, like mental health healing from a holistic standpoint, spirituality. I started like all these things started clicking, and I ended up enrolling in natural medicine school. So right now I'm a holistic health practitioner because I have 2 bachelor's and a master's degree, and eventually I will have my PhD and doctorate, which will make me a doctor of natural medicine. And so I started learning about all these things, and I started understanding mindset and subconscious and wounds and energy, and how our bodies can hold on to our trauma, and how we even bring in trauma from our generations through our DNA, and all of these things, and how impactful your childhood experience and how you feel about yourself really is, and chakras and all of these things. Like, it all just kind of came together that I really started to be like, okay, this is my world. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm learning. And so I hired a mentor, and I spent over $1,000 for like an 8-week mastermind with this mentor. And essentially it was to like energetically unbind myself from a lot of the fear, a lot of the shame, and a lot of the insecurity that I was feeling at that time. And she was amazing. And I'm literally, you guys, on the first call, she looked at me and she goes, Arianna, you have good girl syndrome. You have little girl syndrome, and you have no idea. You haven't even seen your power. You don't even know that it exists. The way you've been living, the mask you've been wearing, how much you've been dimming yourself for survival is insane. And you guys, guess what? Guess what my first freaking response to her was? Picture this. I'm 22, by the way, when this is all going on. She's like saying all that, and I'm like blown away, and I'm just like, and I go, what's little girl syndrome? I didn't even know what it meant. And so I actually have it pulled up here for you guys to, like, I'm going to read off a couple ways that it can be described to see if you guys actually feel this way at once in your life, or you've seen it, or you are currently dealing with it right now. And so it says, good girl syndrome happens when girls and women internalize cultural messages about how they should behave in nature. Right? Not like in nature, like in the forest, but like in nature, like in who you are. Another thing says it comes from a history of trauma, most likely in childhood. Their behaviors like people pleasing and perfectionism, and can form a hypervigilance. Another way that it can be said is it's a good girl is someone who carries someone else's ideas about who they are. Right? So it's like conforming yourself and editing who you are to please other people, to be the expectation of your parents, to be what your partner wants you to be, to constantly fulfill other people's needs and emotional states where you are left, where you're not in alignment to who you are. It's almost like you're living your life for other people. You care more about how others perceive you instead of asking yourself if you actually like yourself, actually if you enjoy you as who you are. And then I wanted to read this to you as well. Addressing good girl syndrome often involves recognizing and challenging these learned, ingrained beliefs and behaviors, right? And developing the assertive skills to set boundaries, right? So the way that I can describe it as far as how I felt that good girl syndrome or little girl syndrome affected me was that, like, I was just that girl that was supposed to be seen but not heard. I just felt like I was living my life for other people. I was so insecure and so fearful to be who I really am, because every time that I did show up in my authenticity, I was bullied for it. Everyone looked at me, everyone was saying you're too much, or like any time that I was in my zone of genius, in my element, doing things that I actually loved, in that vibration of authenticity, I got negative criticism. I was judged for it. And that's also what I write about in the book. I had amazing things that I was just naturally good at growing up. And it was almost like I was shown through other people's jealousy and projections that it wasn't okay to be that, and that it wasn't safe, right? Like, that's what I took away from all these experiences. Like, it's not safe to be good at this. It's not safe to be really smart in school, because all the people that aren't smart hate you for being smart. It's like they weren't doing well in school. They saw that I was acing every exam, and that bothered them. So they had some way to make me feel like I wasn't okay, to bring me down. But at that time, I didn't have any self-awareness, so I absorbed like, oh, you're too smart. Stop trying so hard. You're an overachiever. Like, this is what I learned, but they were actually things that I was good at, that I liked to study for. Like, I was a bookworm. I loved learning. I loved studying. I loved playing my instrument. I was first chair. I played the alto saxophone. I was really good at it. But like, for example, anytime that I got a solo, all the girls in the band would look at me like, how dare she? You know what I mean? And I was like, I felt bad. And that's good girl syndrome. It's like feeling bad for being for being successful, feeling bad for being who you are, feeling like it's not safe to be who you are based off your past experiences. It's like you have all this potential and wisdom or talent, whatever it is for you inside you, and you dim it down because you feel like it's not safe. You feel like no one's going to accept you for being you, or you just feel like it is your job all the time to be the moderator, the emotional moderator for other people around you. You kind of take on the emotional labor of other people, and it starts to drain you. I feel like I said this in a TikTok recently where I was like, I prided myself on being this person because I got so much validation for it, because I was there for so many people. I was there for everybody, and I dropped everything for anyone at any time. And I thought that was so noble. I thought that was so amazing of me. But at the same time, when you do that and your life is crumbling, you're not tending to the things that you need to tend to, that's when you need to really reel it in. And that's kind of like the space that I got to. I was like, I'm not going to become the vision of myself that I keep seeing. I'm not going to be that woman and also live my life for other people, you know? And there's a beautiful balance though that we can come into in the middle of those things, where I maintain that innocence. I maintain that goofy side of me. I maintain who I really am and be authentic, but I have some more boundaries, you know, like I say the word no more. I stop tolerating those misogynistic comments. I stop allowing people to walk all over me. I actually communicate myself and share how I really feel. It's almost like you feel bad for being truthful, right? Like you want to say something, someone asks you a question and your answer is like, oh, this is going to hurt their feelings. So you sugarcoat it. You water your own answer down, or you water your intelligence down around other people. I was like, wow, I've been living my life for other people this whole time. And imagine what my life could look like if I started living for me. And I started being who I really fucking am. And I started just making the decisions that feel good to me and stop caring so much about what other people think. And that sounds amazing in theory, but it was extremely challenging because of everything that was hardwired in my subconscious, all the memories, all the traumas that taught me the opposite of that. And like so much fear came up throughout healing all of this is because it brought up that fear again. It was me getting outside my comfort zone. It was me being authentic, you know, taking the mask off permanently and learning how to kind of feel exposed, right? Be who you really are in every environment, no matter who you're around. And of course, fear comes up because that's the feeling from the old experiences when you would do the same thing, when you would show up and be that person that you really are, or you would do the thing you really want to do and people judge you for it. People criticize you, people bullied you, people say no one's going to love you, that's stupid, you're never going to make money doing that, whatever it is that you were told, and then you listen to it, right? But when you start healing from these things, and it's almost like that exposure therapy, right? And it's like exposing yourself to a little bit of that fear in healthy ways so that your nervous system gets used to and comfortable in these scenarios, environments, or situations where you're actually showing up as you, right? And another thing, like energetically, if you want to speak about it, is when you are wearing a mask, when you are molding yourself, when you are watering yourself down to protect yourself, it's really important to love all aspects of yourself, because, you know, like the version of me that protected me and watered myself down genuinely did that out of survival because I was so terrified. And I know that, and I love myself for that, and it's okay. You know what I mean? It's not about shaming the past versions of us. It's actually loving them is what really brings healing. When you stop wearing the mask, when you stop listening to the voices in your head and realizing that they're everybody else's voices, right? Like it's not your own voice. It's the negative self-talk is all the bullies, is all the old bosses, is all the exes that you have and what they told you about you. And you realize that none of it's true. and you start to redefine these things for yourself. You redefine what beauty is and what makes you feel beautiful. You redefine what success actually means for you, and you start striving in that direction instead of what society, your parents, your family says would be successful for you. The more that you energetically live in that authenticity is the highest vibration that we can embody as human beings. And so that's such a powerful message when you send that out to the universe. When you are being authentic, it's showing the universe that you are being you fully, and you don't want to be anybody else, and you love you, and you so much so that you respect and love yourself enough to put yourself out there, to risk the criticism, to risk the judgment, because you know the light that you have to share, and that everybody that judges you or says something negative about you, as long as you're doing it from love, right? As long as you're actually, doing it from love and care for other people, right? You can still have your boundaries, but it's showing the universe like, hey, I know who I am. I choose to be this fully, right? And then the energy that makes you a magnet for what is truly meant for you. Because what I also realized is that when I was wearing that mask and watering myself down and like playing myself as a character at like 15%, is that I would attract relationships, friendships, money, and opportunities that matched that level of myself, that were like 15% of what I really wanted. Income that was like very low, because I never even imagined or lived in the identity of someone who made a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like, I attracted things that were at the level that I was playing myself as. Does that make sense? And when you ramp that shit up to 100% and you are fully authentic and you are putting yourself out there and you are honoring yourself over the perception of others and what people are going to say or think or judge you as, and you start living for you, you start to actually attract things to yourself because you're being that vibration. Your vibration has risen and you've taken off the mask. You're sending out a clear message to the universe. You're being who you are, and you're allowing yourself to experience what you genuinely want. You're following your natural desires. You believe in yourself. And you start to become this magnet for other things that are higher vibrational than the other identity. And it's always authentic, right? Like any transformation we do, it's not about change. It's, yes, we're changing who we are being, but it's not who we are at the core. It's maintaining that authenticity. It's coming home to who we really are. It's actually remembering and expanding that and being more and more real and more authentic. So it's actually coming home to yourself. I don't want anyone to watch this or listen to this and think that we have to change everything about ourselves, because that's not what we're doing. And so what I realize is that the more and more that I challenge myself to follow what I genuinely want, even if society thinks that's weird, even if people around me disagree with me, even if it goes against what my parents ever thought would be for me, and I just do the thing because this is my life and I deserve it, and I stand up more and I say no more, it's really powerful. It is so powerful. And I want you to know that the world deserves to see who you really are. Your friends, right? Like even friendships, if you're kind of just conforming yourself and editing who you are to be like other women or to be like other people that you want to be friends with, they're only going to know that version of you, right? So when we do this healing work and we take off the mask, one thing that comes with this is people kind of not really understanding you, or they might feel confused or feel like you're changing, and that's okay, right? Because think about it, you were wearing a mask for so long, you watered yourself down, you didn't share your actual beliefs and ideas because you were terrified of what people would think about you. Like you hid so much of yourself for so long that people thought that they knew you, and they did. They knew a certain version of you, and that's okay. But when you start to become more of yourself and you start to honor more of yourself and you start maybe acting a little bit different, saying more things, speaking up, saying no, maybe you're not around as often or as much just because you're focusing on yourself, and people just might realize that. They might notice the shift, and that's okay. Now, the way they react to the shift is a very good indicator of if you want them to stick around in your life or not, right? Because we always have control over who we allow in, what we allow into our lives. And so I really believe that this is an interesting part of the journey when you actually take off the mask and start to become more like come back home to yourself and express that, is that a lot of people have something to say, and it's just like, it's almost like they out themselves. It's like, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to defend or over explain yourself. Just do the thing, do you. And then depending on how people react to that, it's kind of like them outing themselves, them showing you directly if they're happy for you, if they care about you and they love you for this and they want to know more about it or what you're doing or any of that, or if they're just like judging you for it, or they have something to say, or you can tell that it's triggering them. And that's okay, right? It's okay. Everyone else is on their own journey, and sometimes when we're on our journey, we happen to go through a transformation or, you know, learn things, and we end up being like walking tower moments for other people. We might just unintentionally trigger other people by being in their presence, and that is okay. And it's ultimately your bright light that's really triggering that wound that they have, and that's okay. And that just means that, you know, everyone has improvement to work on. I still have improvement to work on, and that's like my biggest thing, is that one thing that I loved about that mentor that told me that is that she was doing the work as well. She was healing right alongside us, and it was so motivating to have a coach, you know. Like, I've been through traditional therapy before, and it was kind of weird. I didn't like it because of many reasons, but one of the reasons was because I just felt like this was a random person that I didn't know anything about, and I function and actually do better in spaces like this, like holistic healing spirituality, where you can see your mentors, your coaches, your practitioners also doing the work, and they're in it too. You know what I mean? And they don't put themselves on a pedestal, and they're doing the work right alongside you. So I think that's really beautiful. And so let me know. I actually created, below this episode is going to be a link for my services, like where my little website is for now. And I put a little document there, a little form for you guys to write into this podcast. And eventually when I get like maybe 5 to 10 write-ins, I'll do a Q&A and I'll answer your guys' questions. So whether you have a story and then it follows with a question, or you have just a random question and you want to ask me, I really want to start like connecting with you guys through that. So if you go to my beacons link, it'll say like services. You can click on that, and then there'll be a little Google form where you can just like, it's anonymous as well, unless you really want me to say your name. But I won't like out you or say any details about who you really are, so no one will know who's asking the questions. But I will read your little story or your situation that you're going through or your question, and I will answer it. So that's another way that I'm trying to kind of expand this podcast. But essentially, let me know if you guys feel like you suffer from good girl syndrome, where you're kind of taught to like be quiet, be this watered down version of you, that it's not safe to be this or that, and that, you know, you just absorbed all of these projections from other people when you were younger and thought that they were all true, and then you live from that identity for so long, because it's essentially an identity that other people formed for you. And, you know, at the same time, it's not intentional, at least I hope so. Majority of the time, at least in my situation, it was so unintentional. I know my parents were doing their absolute best, and I accept that. And I've forgiven them a long time ago, and there's no hard feelings at all. And honestly, I know that my soul chose to go through these things to be able to develop that mental and emotional resilience to be able to coach on it, right? Like, if I didn't go through any trauma, I would not be sitting here teaching about this, teaching about transformations, teaching about healing from the past. Like, I wouldn't even be here. I wouldn't even be this person, I don't think. And so it's beautiful when you can really get to this place of acceptance and gratitude for the past, and then choose to look towards the future and walk forward with your own identity that is true to you. And you let go of everything that you were taught to be and think as and what's possible, and you just start building that for yourself. And so I'm so excited to be back. I'm so excited to be sharing so much more about myself. And one thing that I'm working on right now, the next thing that it's actually going to be launching, like right now I only have readings available for you guys, and the next thing that I'm actually going to be launching next week is a free masterclass called Rebirth. And essentially this is the total transformation from the inside out in 4 months that we're doing for women. We're creating that sisterhood energy and community. I know my journey has been really freaking lonely, and I want women to feel safe. That's why I'm only doing this program for women, just because we're going to be talking about stuff like that and, you know, things that I mentioned here, and I want people to feel comfortable. I have worked with men in the past, but I obviously can speak more, and I feel like I have more of a way to work with women because obviously I am one. But yeah, it's going to be called Rebirth. It's going to be free. I'm going to be talking about how in 4 months you can really have a complete glow up in mind, body, and spirit. It's going to be focusing on that physical wellness, like all the things that I did, creating that solid foundation, all the things that I did to lose that 45 pounds, to detox your body, to have more energy. In this program as women, we're going to be learning to reframe our relationship with food, reframe our relationship with our bodies and beauty, what success is. And essentially this rebirth is going to be us taking off the mask, learning how to accept all of us, learning how to feel confident and safe in our bodies, learning how to communicate and say no more. Like it's really taking women that are feeling like really anxious, insecure, playing small in their lives in 4 months to having a complete glow up spiritually, mentally, and physically, where you now are magnetic. You now believe in yourself. You now have this bulletproof faith and trust in the universe and in yourself. And ultimately you end up leading and guiding yourself. You have a solid foundation to fall back on when it comes to physical wellness habits and routines, so that and energy maintenance, right? Like energetic protection, energy maintenance, cleansing our energy, all of these things that are really necessary so that you guys can go out and now you feel like that new identity that you've always been visualizing. Like we're going to collapse this time in 4 months, and we're doing this glow up together, and we're going to be healing, and we're going to be developing the habits, and we're going to be working on the self-talk. We're going to be doing the healing work, but we're also going to be learning how we can apply all of this to our daily lives so that no matter what environment you're at, we're not going to be scared anymore to speak up. We're not going to be scared anymore to be who we really are and share our actual beliefs and opinions. We're not scared anymore to negotiate a salary because we know our worth, right? And we're not going to feel bad for negotiating. You know what I mean? Like we're stepping it up. And we're finally going to collapse time so that in 4 months, by next year, because this program is going to launch in October, by next year, you guys are going to be a completely different energy, holding a completely different frequency, feeling so differently about yourself, being on your own side, excited to seize your own opportunities and create that life that you've always wanted, because you deserve to actually make that happen instead of thinking about it and telling yourself that's just a dream. Because that keeps coming into your mind and playing on repeat for you because it is meant for you, and source is ushering you. They're shaking you. They're trying to be like, hey, this is for you. This is who you are. This is a future timeline, you know? So when we actually align our frequency to the frequency of what we desire and what we want our lives to actually be and feel like, is when we collapse that time and we start to magnetize newer things into our reality that actually match who we are being, because we attract who we are being. We don't attract what we say we want. I can sit here all freaking day until I'm blue in the face saying that I want a Lamborghini. I will never have that or attract that into my reality if I'm not living on the vibration of having a Lamborghini, of what that actually feels like, of what version of me has that, and how do I become more and more and more like her, right? So next week, I really want to dive more into the identity work, which is exactly what rebirth is. It's kind of shedding your whole entire old identity and entering a new one and stepping into a new one. And when you do that, you shift your frequency, and that's why you attract new things into your reality. And I'm a huge freaking believer in action, and how action is such a huge magnetizer, at least in my reality. Like, I know we've seen all those people on TikTok, and like, it's true, and it can happen that you can manifest something without doing anything. But to me, it's like, who are we being? Like, I want to wake up every day and feel and act and think and be who I want to be someone that feels good, is healthy, is empowering myself, is confident in who I really are, that isn't shaken or like afraid to be who I really am. I want to be stable in who I am and express that fully. And I want to see, and I have seen, I want you guys to see what happens on the other side of that. When you actually get outside your comfort zone, when you actually do the things that you've been telling the universe, source, God, that you're going to do. things start to fall into place for you when you actually start doing the things and feeling the feelings and taking the action in the ways that you've been saying you will. So let me know underneath this video. You can rate this podcast on Spotify. You can comment below, like and subscribe to this channel. I actually posted a reading, my first reading that I ever did on this channel as well. It's on just my regular page. I know my podcast here is in a playlist, so go check that out if that's calling you. But I'm so excited. I'm going to be here more, showing up on YouTube every week for my podcast and posting videos on my channel for readings and other things as well. And stay tuned for this Rebirth Masterclass that is going to be launching next week. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram for that information and be the first to know when that is available for you. It's free. And I'm so excited because I'm going to be sharing with you guys in that masterclass my story about my rebirth and what I did, what you guys need, and what the missing pieces are, because I know what it's like to truly be doing this work and following the people and wanting to attract new things into your reality and seeing that people are doing it and seeing that it's possible, but feeling like it's not working for you. And I have a lot of theories and reasons as to why that is and why you're probably stuck right now. So follow me for more. I'm so excited to be back. Again, you can find my book in the link down below. You can write in and ask your question into the podcast down below. So thank you guys so much. I hope you're having a great week. I hope that you learned a lot or maybe related to me in my story and felt like maybe you had some perspective shifts. But yeah, I'll see you next week. I'm so excited and have a good week. Bye.